welcome to Rise Up with Orion. Thank you so much for joining our latest episode. We are so excited to introduce a new presenter to you today. She is an old friend of mine. We're crossing paths again. So excited to have her here. This is our presenter, Ann Forrester. She's a writer, actress, model, and once upon a time, a television journalist. She has landed roles in film, TV, commercials, and national print campaigns such as Intel and Wrangler Workwear. Ann studied broadcast journalism and political science, graduating with honors from Southern Utah University. Ann worked at NBC TV as an NBC TV affiliate in Salt Lake City as an investigative producer and general assignment reporter. Her work has been recognized by the Society of Professional Journalists and appeared on NBC's Dateline. Always wanting to learn more, Ann went on to earn her Master's of Arts in Teaching for Western Governors University. She's published 2 children's books, which I'm so excited to admit that I have read, that she shares to encourage childhood literacy. Ann has held state and local pageant titles and uses her voice to inspire others to learn, lead, and lift to make a difference in their community. Ann, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and just kind of continue the conversations that you've had with past guests. So thank you again.
Absolutely. For those of you that are regulars on our podcast, last month we talked to 2 of our coaches about habits and building successful habits. But Ann, I know you're going to talk about it. Unfortunately, not all habits are successful, which is why we're talking about disappointment and defeat, but how to be successful. So let's kind of start there.
Exactly. Disappointment is something that you're going to encounter in life. It's just part of life. So while we have these great aspirations and goals and we have these habits we want to keep building, it's important to recognize that you may encounter setbacks, challenges, and it may not always turn out the way you want it to. So the message I want to share today is disappointment over defeat, where disappointment is healthy. It can actually fuel us to continue to keep learning and growing, and that's what we want to do. However, you don't want that disappointment to turn into defeat. Defeat is final, and that means that you've stopped trying and stopped trying to grow. So we want to avoid that feeling of defeat and really let disappointment fuel us. And there's things that we can do to handle those feelings of disappointment. And first, I want to talk about what disappointment is, because it's kind of a complex emotion, and you may feel a mix of sadness or anger. And the definition I like to use of disappointment is when you have this expectation, this aspiration, and it falls short and your reality doesn't matches up. And so that's when you're going to feel that disappointment. But there's ways that we can handle it. And one thing that I want to share is that when you encounter disappointment, that you can use it to keep going. And that's the message I think that comes from disappointment, is keep going, keep trying. And yeah, we'll get into some ways when you have how you can create, ways that you can handle it, because it's tough. It's tough feeling those feelings.
Yes, exactly. One of the things that comes to mind for me is, a quote that I've posted recently, that kind of failure or disappointment means that you're trying. One of those, if you're not reaching any of those stumbling blocks, if you will, or, setbacks, you're not trying. So again, perfection is nothing but an image, and no one is perfect. So I think, that's fantastic on, exactly what you're saying is we've all been there. And, unfortunately, it's affected all of us in different ways, whether it be raising a family like we do, our career, our jobs, or just our personal growth, depending on where we are within our life. So.
Exactly. And I love what you said about trying. I think there is power in effort. Even if you don't achieve that goal or aspiration, it doesn't mean that you won't ever achieve that, but you can look at that effort. And I think effort is powerful. One thing about effort is that it not only produces results, it may not be the achieved result, but it fuels you. And when you take a look at your effort, you can adapt and change and maybe redirect your course. And so that's one takeaway that I hope people, take from this is that your effort needs to be celebrated. Even if you didn't achieve that goal, celebrate that effort. That's amazing. Some people don't even try. So the fact that you are putting in that effort to achieve that goal, that's something worth celebrating.
Yeah, even if you just set the goal, again, those little teeny baby steps just to set the goal and get started, even if you didn't get there. So, Anne, have you expressed disappointment and how did you handle that? If
So
I
I
dare
want to,
ask a personal question.
yeah, no, I have experienced disappointment many times. I think we all have in one way or another. And my background and experience comes from television news, acting, and my involvement in pageantry. And those are three industries where you have to be comfortable hearing the word no and facing and dealing with disappointment. In acting, when I go into an audition, I can't control the outcome of that audition. It may be something the director is looking for, it may be a look, it could be a variety of different things. I can't control that outcome, but one thing that's important to remember is that when you when you set out a goal, have a success metric in your mind and create that so that when you go into a process of achieving a goal or working towards something that you want to accomplish, you can still define your success by having that success metric. And that's what I've done in my life. I've learned to do that in my life because I have encountered, not getting the audition. I've held state and local titles and I've competed at the national level. And I understand what it's like when you don't achieve that goal. And it's important to realize that there are ways that you can still come out a winner, even if that aspiration wasn't quite reached. And that's why I think it's so important to set a success metric for yourself.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm thinking about, and of course, so many of this you learn throughout life experience, but when you're talking about success metric, we're not talking about setting your expectations really low for yourself, where, you're going to be disappointed no matter what. So I might as well set the bar really low for myself. So again, talk a little bit about that on, examples of success metrics and not just not believing in yourself and setting the metric too low.
Right. No, I'm so glad you brought that up. They're two totally different things. Defining your success metric is not lowering expectations, not believing in yourself. You don't want to do that. But defining your success metric is focusing on what you can control. And like I said, when I've gone into auditions, when I've gone into pageant interviews, that's an area of competition in pageantry. I can't control the outcome 100% because I'm dealing with someone else. I'm dealing with another party, whether it's judges, whether it's a director. And so I can focus on what I can control. And that's so important when setting your success metric. So focus on what you can control. When I go into a pageant interview, I set my success metric as what is the message I want to share? What are the things I want to get across? I can control that. I can share my message, why I want that particular title. And that way I feel that if I achieve those things, I walk out a winner. Whether or not the judge likes me, whether or not they felt a connection with me, I can still walk out a winner because I've achieved my success metric and sharing what I can control. And another thing is you're in control of the input. And so when you give it your 100%, give it your all, you're controlling that input. So no matter what the outcome is, you can still walk away a winner because you gave it your all. I think that's the definition of success, is giving it your all, putting forth your best foot in whatever your goal or aspiration is. And when you do that, you'll still come out successful because those are the things you can control. And so when I have done a national pageant or when I've done an audition, I focus on, do I know my lines, my sides? Do I convey the right emotion, the emotion I want to portray? So I can control those things. So no matter what the outcome is, I walk out knowing that I achieved what I wanted to with that particular experience. And I think when you focus on what you can control, because so much of life is out of our control.
Mhm.
We all know
Exactly.
that from the last couple years. So I
Mhm.
think when you focus on your effort, like I said, effort's powerful. Focus on your effort, your input, and set mini goals, small wins. I like to refer to them as those small wins are so important. It's a small win if I go in and I know all my sides and perform it to the best of my ability. So those small wins should be celebrated. That effort should be celebrated. And then when you walk away from that experience, even if your aspiration was up here, you can
Mhm.
still celebrate those small wins and then use that in your next experience. We want to be growing. We want that trajectory going upward and forward towards our goal. So use that and take a look. You know, if you didn't quite achieve what you wanted to, take some time for reflection and see, is there something that, you know, I can change? Can I pivot my behaviors
Mhm.
and then keep trying, go again?
Yeah, I was going to bring up kind of the emotional part of that as well. So you're putting all the effort in, but at the same time, we can control our reaction. We can control how we learn from that and the reflection. So bringing that emotional piece to the table as well, because we can control how we reacted when, you don't get a part or you don't, meet the goal or whatever, or maybe you're trying to lose weight and you don't lose the amount of weight. We can control our reaction to that to start to reflect. So that's probably where you were going to go with that, is kind of how do we deal with disappointment? How do we deal with those things on, how we reflect and learn and grow and thrive from that?
Exactly. Uh, and like I said, you know, disappointment's complex. So you may feel a lot of different emotions, and that's okay. I think it's so important after we fall short or we encounter that stumbling block, take a breath. Just take a
Mhm.
moment and let yourself feel those things because that's part of human nature. And I think you want to deal with those emotions and just take a beat, you know, if you will,
Yeah.
and just kind of take a breather and let yourself feel that before you go into that stage of reflection. I think it's just so important. You know, when I've encountered disappointment, maybe it's, you know, competing in a pageant or going for a part I really wanted, or, you know, when I'd work on air, so many times my live shots did not go as planned. And you know, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, you know, it didn't go how I saw it in my mind. And,
Right.
um, you know, so I think it's a moment, just take time for yourself to feel those emotions and just deal with that. And sometimes, you know, it might take days, it might take weeks, depending on what
Mhm.
your goal is. You know, just be kind to yourself. I think that's important to show some self-compassion and just take a breath. I think that's the first step. And then, you know, celebrate that effort and reflect. And then you're kind of in the right headspace to look back, which can be hard depending on your goal
Mhm.
or aspiration or, you know, where you fell short. It's hard to take a look inward sometimes. But I think after you've taken that beat, take some time for reflection. And it's important to not beat yourself up. You know, that's where that self compassion comes in.
Mhm.
Um, because, I mean, all throughout our lives, we are learning and growing. You know, hindsight's 2020. It's so easy to look back and be like, oh, if I just would have done this, or you know what I mean? But
Yes.
we're in this stage of like growth. Yeah, we've all done it. We've all been there. So, you know, I think you know, take that time for reflection and look and make a note of where did I succeed? Where were my small wins in this experience? And then it might take a pivot or a change in behaviors for you to try again. You can change your course. Nothing is set in stone. So if you found that some things worked for you and some things didn't, it's okay to change and make those changes and pivot those behaviors. Um, you know, and one thing that I have learned too is that when you hear no, or you know, not right now, you're not the right fit, so many things we hear, it doesn't mean never. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean that
forever.
it's never
Mhm.
going to happen.
Yeah.
It just means, you know, not at this moment. And I think timing is really important with our goals. I think, you know, sometimes we need that time to be refined and grow and learn things, and it's about enjoying the journey too. Sometimes we're so focused on that goal that we
Mhm.
kind of forget these small wins and learning experiences and opportunities along the way. And it's so important that that's where the life and change happens, is in that. So although we have these high goals and aspirations, it's so important to, focus on that journey, and what did you accomplish in that,
Exactly.
make those changes. But yeah, I'm all about celebrating those small wins, because that's going to fuel you to make those changes.
Yes, and even though you may not see them right then and there, when you hear a hard no, or you didn't see the number you wanted as your success metric, again, it's so hard to see what those, I call them victory laps. I talk about that with my staff a lot. What's your victory lap in this? Because of course they're completely defeated, if you will. But the reality is there's still a victory lap that they can take, and we can, as you said, pivot and keep going. So Anne, in your experience, and if I dare say, in your disappointments that you've had, how do you step back out there after disappointment and keep going, when defeat might be looming over your head? What are your strategies to get back out there?
I think that's the $1,000,000 question for so many of us.
Yeah.
It's so important to keep going and keep trying, but it's hard. It's hard when maybe it was a job promotion, or maybe it was a project at work, or, a presentation, or whatever it may be, a goal that you had, like you said, maybe it's weight loss, whatever it may be. It's hard when you fall short, because you experience that array of emotions, and you kind of feel, a lot of different things, and maybe your self-worth is questioned in that. But the message I want to share is that you can overcome that disappointment and keep it from turning into defeat. And the important thing, there's a couple of important things I want to share when it comes to keep going, because that is the biggest thing, is just keep going. One, look at your community, look at your support system, and who are the people that were cheering you on through that. You want those people around you to keep, that moral support, and, being planted in good soil. That's so important, because then you're going to be able to keep growing and thriving. So, take a moment. I feel that, in my life, my family is my support system. I have amazing friends who, cheer me on in all my endeavors. And we've all experienced, especially, in the film industry or in pageantry, a lot of people in that industry, in both those industries, know what it's like to not succeed and not, reach that aspiration. So having a strong support system, having that community that's going to be there for you and kind of cushion that disappointment is so, so important. So find your tribe, find your community, and those people that will cheer you on when you go again. I just think, that's the greatest thing. And if you can do that for someone else, when you know that someone is going towards a goal or something they want to achieve, if you can be that support system, that is so, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of other resources as well that have turned to. I'm with you. I turn to people. I turn to my community and my family and my coworkers in the Orion community, that I'm so lucky to be with. What are some other resources that, people could utilize, maybe not necessarily yourself, that can help them pick themselves up, brush it off, and keep going?
One thing that I found that has helped me is journaling. As a writer, I feel that it's important to process that experience. And so taking the time, write down your thoughts. I really believe there's power in words. And so, write down what those small wins or those victory laps, I love that, write those down so that you can go back and look at those. Like I said, hindsight's 20/20, and sometimes we only focus on what went wrong, but look at what went right and celebrate those. And so journaling, I think, is so important. For me, it's helped clear my head. It's helped clear my thought process. And then use that to write down new goals. When you actually put pen to paper, or, or type it on your phone. I'm old school. I love pen and paper. So, when you actually write that down and set new goals and redirect where you need to be, I think that's powerful. And so when you can see that and visualize that, visualization.
I got it.
So, I think that is powerful as well. And so when you visualize you achieving your goal, I feel like, that motivates you. That's what Olympic athletes do. And, I'm going to compare us all to Olympic athletes, but I feel that it's important that you visualize and you see yourself. Where do you want to be? What is your 5, your 10-year goal? What are the things you want to accomplish? So write them down, visualize it happening. And then, it's the little things every day that add up that you can reach that goal.
Yes. And you know what, Anne, one of the things that I have not done myself, but again, I love talking about it and reading more about it is, as I talk about your resume, a lot of people, they focus on what they haven't done. We are our own worst enemy. So to have not only, the things that didn't go right, but also kind of your victory resume. So what are the things that did go well? And again, that's not just today, but what happened really well in your last job? You may not be there anymore, but what happened? Because that's also going to really show you that different path and that diversion within your life to show the victories. What are you really, really good at? And hopefully we can hone in on those a little bit more as well.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a lot of the listeners today and, the viewers may not relate too much to pageantry, but that's my experience. And so I just want to share a few things. But, pageantry is, so much of it is what you see on stage, and that it becomes this visual competition, but it's very much mental and physical. And when you prepare, it is such a mental game to go compete at a national pageant. And so when you don't get that national title, you fall short of it, that's where that disappointment comes in, because you put so much work, so much time, so much effort. But one thing that I've learned is, when I represented Utah on the national stage, I still was Mrs. Utah, and I still had that title to be able to go and make a difference. And so that, is my victory lap. And same with, working in the film industry. I can't tell you how many auditions I have gone on and not gotten, and how many parts that maybe I've missed out on. But it's important to remember the things that you did book. And so I've been able to have wonderful experiences with wonderful coworkers on film and commercial sets. And so those are the things that are important to remember, those successes that you had. It's so easy for our minds to focus on the negative, like you said, and what went wrong and things that we didn't get, or, feel like we may have missed out on. But I think, if you look back, in your life, there are things that can be celebrated that you did achieve because you put in that effort, you put in that work, you set that success metric for yourself. And so those things need to be celebrated. I love what you said about victory laps and, small wins. Yeah, I think that's so important to fuel us to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk a little bit about kind of moving back to the success metric. I think there's obviously goals that are, we call them big audacious goals, or something that's really, do I dare say, far-fetched, that just isn't reasonable. So obviously when we're talking about success metrics, we want it to be something that we can visualize, that we can obtain. And it's not something that is too big, too unknown, that it's just never going to happen. So kind of how do you define that and figure out where that is for yourself?
It's so important that, in the last episode, they talked about, aspirations, where it's kind of this big, lofty idea, and you want to be able to break that down. So specifically, when we're setting a goal, we want to be specific. And so what are things that you can break that down? So if my goal, let's say if, I want to, for an example, like I want to run a marathon. My husband's trying to train right now. That's his goal, is to run a marathon. I have no aspiration to run a marathon. Kudos to anyone who really does that, because it's a hard feat. So if that's your goal, your aspiration, you can't just go out and run 26 miles. You need to break that down. So you need to be specific. Break it down to things that you can do every single day. I think success is effort, and that effort needs to be consistent. So things that you are doing every single day, small things, and then build that up over time. What's something you can achieve in a month? And however long it may take your goal, everyone's goals and aspirations will be so different, but break that down, be very specific. So, how much can you run every day? My husband will sometimes run 6 or 7 miles in a day and work on his time, his pacing to be able to achieve that bigger goal. So you definitely need to be specific in setting your goals, break it down and into smaller time things. When I go in for an audition, sometimes I may only have a couple days to prepare, and I may get my sides and they say, okay, because of our changing world, many auditions are self-tape auditions. Rarely do you go in person for a lot of these jobs. And so, you'll break that down and I'll say, okay, I have maybe 4 or 5 days to learn my sides and, focus on what I can control. I can control my lighting. I can control my sound. I can focus on, if I know my sides or not, and breaking those things down. And that way, when I go and submit my self-tape audition, I've done all these things on my checklist to be able to say, you know what, I've put in the input, I have given it my all, and the output is not up to me, but I've done everything that I can to do that. And, and then when you get that call back, oh, it's so exciting. And then sometimes you'll get an email and it's like, not at this time. So then which is probably more often than not. And so then you just keep going. And so, it's important to break down your success metric. And so, make it very specific. And that way you can focus on what you can control.
And would you say that it's okay to change your success metric?
Definitely, definitely. I think as you're going through this trajectory towards your goal, you learn things about yourself. You may learn, you know what, that's not so important. Everyone's sense of accomplishment is going to come from different things and different sources. So what is success to one person may not be the definition of success to another person. So it's important that your definition of success, what makes you feel that sense of achievement, comes from within. It will be individualized. And so take a moment to look at what is important to you. How do you get that sense of achievement? And, if you're going through the process, definitely change. If it's maybe not working, if you feel that, you know what, this, maybe my goal was this and, life's taken me over here. I can tell you, after I graduated college, I started at a TV station just 2 weeks after. And my goal was to be an on-air reporter. But my first job in TV was not on air. I was behind the scenes. I was running camera. I was running teleprompter. I was the one getting scripts off the printers for the anchors to read. And then that's where I started. And at that time, I was just, I'm so happy to be here. Like, this is great. So, but after doing that job for a little while, I realized I'm like, my goal is here. I want to be able to be an on-air reporter. That's what I went to school for. That's my aspiration. And so during my time, I came in on my days off. I shadowed TV veterans. I had producers look over my scripts that I was writing, look at my copy, and eventually moved over to AP, an associate producer. I worked as a producer for the investigative team and, had these opportunities because, I kept putting in that effort. Like I said, effort's so powerful. And people notice effort. And so, I feel that was recognized, and eventually I was giving opportunities to report on air and do stories, and, worked in television news for about 7 years. And when I left that field, I was reporting on air. I was a general assignment reporter. I covered education for a little bit, and I was able to achieve that. But it took time and effort. And sometimes, I'd write things and I would have, a senior TV reporter or, producer look at it and, they'd mark it all up and hand it back to me. And I felt like, oh, well, this was not good at all. So you just keep putting in that effort. And, after TV news, I kind of set a new goal, which wasn't really in my mind. It just, because of opportunities covering education, I really felt connected to teachers and principals and the people that I would talk to in the education world. And it led me to go pursue my master's in teaching, which was a new goal. And sometimes, on the way to achieving a goal, you find a new goal. And, life kind of has these funny paths for us. And so I went that route. and got my teaching license and student taught in 2nd grade. And that was amazing. And it was just, you never know where life will take you. It's so funny, but, and as you're working towards these goals, it's okay if something out of the blue comes your way and you can pivot and change. And I think that's the beauty in life, is that we can change and we can pivot and we can, take a new path. And that's where the growth and change comes from, is, take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. I think that's so important. And you won't find those opportunities unless you're working towards something. So, I think it's so important. Just keep going, stay on the path, and you never know where that path will lead you.
Yes. And, a couple of things popped out to me is, the timeliness of it. It's not something that just dropped in your lap overnight. That passion grew, and it took years, for that to happen. And I think so many of us were so in the immediate gratification, stage of our lives. Everything is immediate with a good old phone and everything. So again, allowing time, to really be on our side. It's okay if it doesn't happen overnight. And then, circling back to that, your tribe, those that are there to support you. Again, you haven't created this empire for yourself all alone. There's been a lot of people that you've crossed paths with that are also supporting you, even though they may have been, part of the disappointment at times. They're there. And one of the examples that I wanted to bring up is having this conversation with my 9-year-old son, on what disappointment really felt like. And he felt that for the first time with his soccer coach a couple of weeks ago, when he asked his soccer coach why he can't take penalty kicks. It seems like something to me, I didn't understand it. So I had to ask the questions of, why is this so important to you? He told me. And then he told me that his coach said, well, you just need to try harder. And to a 9-year-old, that's a huge, kick to the gut. But again, to him, that was disappointment. And he was going down the path of defeat. So we kind of talked through that, and then we were trying to figure out, well, now what? Now, how do I get there? What are the next ways to pivot so I can show my coach that I am trying harder, to try to get there? So again, this process doesn't start as adults. We craft these experiences for our kids, and it's taken weeks. Going back to the timeliness of it, it's taking weeks for him to come back from that and to push the disappointment aside and get out there and fine tune those skills that he needs in order to take a penalty kick one day, which he doesn't know when that's going to be. So I think, a couple of those different elements that you reiterated is so amazing, for all of us to remember.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I think, and this is something that applies to everyone. It doesn't matter your age or what stage of life you're in or what your goal is, no matter how small you may think your goal is or how lofty. It applies to everyone, because we all are going to experience those stumbling blocks and those setbacks. But what's important is, how do you learn and pivot from that? And how do you use that to make yourself better the next go around? Yeah, and it's funny you talk about, timing, because I believe, timing is everything. I believe it has to be a perfect storm when you're going for that, that goal, just everything coming together, the effort that you put in, and, and whether or not that, if it's a promotion or something like that, or, a pageant title, even just that perfect storm of that timing. But, all, within the last 2-3 years, we've all experienced feelings of disappointment with everything else, just our world and everything that has happened. And so I think it's important to really understand, what disappointment is and how we can use it to turn ourselves around. And what's interesting over the last couple of years too, I think, is we've experienced, loneliness and disappointment of things not happening, or, events being canceled or plans being changed. We all have experienced that. But I think disappointment, it builds resiliency. And that is so, so important, because, I think in our world today, you need to be resilient. You need to be able to see things, not coming to fruition as you'd hoped, but then using that to keep going. And right now, we all need to keep going, keep growing. And, I think that's a very important trait to build, is resiliency, and learning to be resilient when you encounter setbacks and challenges and disappointments, because it's, it's a theme of life. It's something we all encounter. And so to be able to deal with that, and have effective methods and things that you can do to define your success, create that success metric, will just serve you in the long run, and throughout your life.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as you talk about that, it just reminds me of, to reach out for help. That's why we're starting these conversations. And that's why I'm so thrilled always to bring amazing presenters like yourself onto the podcast, because reaching out for help and asking the questions and having those, Orion health coaches or mental wellness people in the background to have those conversations. Because again, we're all in this together, and most of the time other people have experienced similar things to ourselves and they can help us out. So again, having the support of others and having your skills and your tips and tricks, Anne, is, put it in our tool belt so we can whip it out for later, I think is so amazing. So Anne, I know you launched a podcast yourself. I would love for you to invite people to come and listen, or to reach out to you if they want kind of more information in whatever avenue you would like. So how can people follow you?
Yeah, I am the host of a podcast called Learn, Lead, and Lift. And it's about sharing the stories of women who inspire me and how they've identified their skills, their strengths, their talents, and how they've cultivated those to make a difference in their community and essentially become the leading lady in their own life story. And I think it's important when you see and hear stories of people doing great things and how they've achieved them and how they have kind of, created this goal or whatever it may be. I think that's really inspiring. And I believe that when we uplift one another, we're all elevated, and we need that now more than ever. And so, yeah, I'm on Instagram at Learn, Lead, Lift. You can also find me at Ann Forrester Official on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Ann Forrester. And yeah, my podcast, Learn, Lead, and Lift, you can find it on Spotify and Anchor FM. And, I really appreciate you having me a guest with Orion and being able to share some of these strategies. And I've really loved the conversations that have preceded me. And I feel like this is a great continuation of that conversation. And, like you said, I think it's so important that if we're, feeling these feelings of disappointment, that it's okay to go and ask for help. And, and maybe you need to find professionals that can help you sort through these feelings and see if maybe there's something else that's underlying through all of it. But, now more than ever, we need community and support. And so, yeah, if there are, things that maybe you need to reach out to someone, it's okay to ask for help. It's more than okay. It's encouraged.
Absolutely, it sure is.
Yeah.
And I think your podcast is kind of the next evolution of this conversation as well. You inspire me, obviously, which is why I invited you to be on today. And I'm sure you've got some other people's attention as well. So I'm excited that you were able to fit this into your schedule, your family life, all the things you're doing. But Anne, I really appreciate you being on. And for those listeners that are here, next month, we are going to be cycling back to more of the physical health. We'll be talking about the gut, which unfortunately is all something that we have to deal with on the regular basis. So though it's not habits, maybe it'll form a habit about how to take care of your gut, if you will. But again, feel free to follow Anne in any of those different methods. And Anne, hats off to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Have a fantastic day.